Hello everyone and welcome back to Assassin's Creed Valhalla with me, Longclawvalhalla Steel, where we always deliver. Welcome to part 1 of my gameplay walkthrough series for the brand new DLC, Wrath of the Druids. I'm super excited to get into this and you can share my adventure as it unfolds. So let's get our berserk on and see what happens, shall we? Ava has received a mysterious summons in Ravensthorpe. It seems a traveller has arrived who wishes to speak with him. Meet with your new arrival down at the docks, and Azar is an Eastern merchant, and I suspect a lot more besides. He tells Ava that he's arrived as an envoy from Ireland on behalf of the king of a place called Dublin. He brings trade and wealth from across the seas and intends to set up an Irish merchant store in the settlement to help increase trade relationships between England and Ireland on behalf of the Danes and the Norsemen. Azar goes on to explain that the King of Dublin has also requested Ava's presence and that if he's willing, he'll travel back to Ireland to meet him there. Ava finds this difficult to understand. He tells Azar he knows no one in Ireland. He says, "Where's your trade goods and where's your ship? That's what I'm interested in." And Azar tells Ava that there's been a naval blockade set up north of the settlement which has prevented his ship getting through. Concerned for the settlement's trade routes, Ava agrees to head off and remove the blockade. So there we go, let's get into this and see what happened, shall we?
A step back to see the truth around you. From a distance you can tell. You and me were meant to be outdoors, forever free, you and me.
So there we go, we're off and running. Now this is an expansion pack that cost me nearly £20, and I'm not really a big fan of paying for additional expansion packs. I prefer games where they give you this stuff for free, but let's give this a go. I'm really interested to continue my journey. I've finished the story campaigns and I've cleared out the Order of the Ancients, so I'm looking for something else to do. Once you ride up the river in your boat, in your longship, which is the best idea, you can take your crew with you and raid on the way if you like. Get to the blockade, you'll see a small camp on both the south and the north side of the river. Take out the guards on both sides and blow up any Once everything is clear, you can head back and tell Azar that he's free to bring his trade ship through. And once Azar appears in the camp, you can go and interact with him using your quest menu. He will have a small tent set up, and he explains that once he has a proper merchant store, he'll be able to take you to Ireland if you're free to go. And he also gives you a letter. I was a bit concerned I was going to have to go off and get some supplies and then build this for him because I just spent all of my materials, but this happened automatically again as part of the expansion, which I think is quite cool. Go back to Azar and he will explain that he's got a letter for you from your cousin, none other, and this is actually the King of Dublin. So your cousin from Norway has risen very high, and eager to accept his cousin's summons, He's a bit annoyed that he wasn't given this information straight away, but go back to Azar and he'll ask if you're ready to go to Ireland and you can accept this to begin your journey. Again, this is very cool, and much like the story arcs for Vinland, and when you go back to Norway you get some really cool footage of being in the boat, and you can interact with the boat and zoom in and out so you can see Ava sat in the longship, which is probably what it would have been like travelling for several weeks to get from one place to another. On the journey, Asa explains that Ireland is full of several kings, and whilst there's many kingdoms, a bit like in the UK, there's one king who has risen higher than all the others and crowned himself the High King Flann. His cousin Barid has ruling over one of the largest and most richest trade ports in Dublin. So this is very cool. It's a bit like the England campaign. You've got lots of different kingdoms, lots of people calling themselves king, and that causes wars over territory, influence, wealth, money, all that kind of things, and of course trade. So this is very interesting, but I'm very keen to figure out how the Druids are going to factor in here, because this is probably set around 1,000 years ago, and the Druids were definitely a massive force that had pushed back the Romans hundreds of years before, and now they're going to interact with the Vikings. And I'm really cool, I'm really interested to see how this story plays out. So there we are, we have made it all the way to Dublin, and look at this, doesn't this look cool? I'm not seeing anything majorly different about the way that Dublin looks, but it is a new area of the map, and hopefully we're going to have some new adventures. Once you get to the bankside, your cousin Barid is there to greet you. This is a nice little scene where you get to see that Ava and his cousin are quite close, around similar age, and remember that this is the king of this particular city, and this is a pretty cool idea that Ava's cousin has risen to a seat of power like this. But there seems to be a little bit of concern as he's joking with Azar about how big his castle is, and Azar is telling him that it's not that impressive compared to some of the places in his home country. You could get a sense here that there's a bit of darkness going on behind the eyes with Ava's cousin, and maybe he's suffering a little bit and he's having a bit of trouble controlling some of the people that he rules over. And remember that what Azar said, that there's a lot of other kings all jostling for power and influence, and Dublin would have been a huge trade centre back in this day, and would have been responsible for a lot of money coming in and out. And I think that that's probably quite a lot of responsibility, and it must be a reason why Ava has been summoned here in the first place. So let's see what is going on. After the brief reunion with your cousin, you can have a little walk through the centre of Dublin yourself. And there's a lot going on here, and you're not going to really explore too much of the area, and that at this point it's more about just showing you where things are. And it does look a little bit different, I must say. And of course I can hear lots of Irish accents as I'm walking around, and it does feel like I've come to a different country. I'm not sure how they've managed that, because the settings and the surroundings are not that different aesthetically. You get introduced to a merchant who has got a lovely gift that Barid has prepared for Ava, a nice ornate looking bow, and you can test this out in a little speed test to see if you can hit all of the targets before the sand runs out. And again, this is something I've done a few times before. I'm not particularly impressed by the content yet that I've had to do, and the mission objectives. However, it is nice to have a weapon that's been given to me at this stage. Obviously, I've paid 20 quid for this expansion pack, and I haven't actually received anything to go with it. There's no adult, any in-game material or anything like that. So it's nice that I've received something as part of the story. It feels kind of natural, and you can equip this and use it as well before you carry on towards the castle. Once you get to the king's, it is just a massive long house, but he calls it his castle. Once you get there, you'll see there's a feast going on, and Barid explains that it's his son's 17th birthday, and while his wife and his mother are away convalescing somewhere in the mountains, he's here celebrating and marking his son's name day. So you can interact with some of the people around the feast. You know how the feasts work. You can pick up a bit of information. You can ask some of the feast dwellers if Barid is a good king, and you can just go and interact with him and his son Siegfried, who are having a heated conversation towards the right hand side of the hall when you go in. And immediately you see that Barid's son Siegfried is being very disrespectful, openly mocking his father in front of all of the courtiers, and Ivar is not particularly happy. You know how his feelings on disrespect and things like that, and he has a bit of a soft spot for the young people. I think he likes to help and influence them. However, he does not like to see his cousin being disrespected in this way, and Barid leaves the hall and says to Ava, "Can you please talk to the boy? I need to go and clear my head." So this is a chance for Ava to have a chat man to man with this young lad. And immediately he starts mocking Ava. He's not interested at all in having any conversations. He even mocks his father for having called upon the Vikings to help him, because it's clear here now that maybe King Breda has not got the influence that he deserves, and people are treating him with some disrespect. He needs a little help from his cousin, who's very good at making and strong-arming situations to get the better of people. In fact, Siegfried is so rude to you that it ends up with him challenging you to a brawl outside. Again, you've done this before, this is nothing new, but just try to avoid getting hit. He's got a very, very fearsome punch. Must be a little street boxer, but if you dodge out the way of everything and hit him with a fury of attacks, he'll be on his floor in the dirt before long. And that teaches the boy some manners, and then you can have the conversation you need to have with him. And how is his father as a king? And his son Siegfried even confirms that he's better at being a host than he is being a king. Ava is keen to find out where his friend is at this point, and Siegfried explains that he spends most of his evenings by his father's graveside, talking to his father. And Ava asks where this is, and just over the battlements and straight ahead you'll see a massive tree and a graveside there, and you can just run across the grass and go to your cousin, who's sitting there in quiet contemplation all by himself. And I think you're getting a sense here that your cousin is not particularly happy. There are many reasons why he's got a lot of weight on his shoulders. Perhaps the job of being a king is just a little bit harder than he thought it was going to be, but also with all of the surrounding kingdoms and all the other kings jostling for power and influence, and it's a little bit much, as well as his father having passed away, his mother being ill, and his son being a rude little twerp. I think he's found it a little difficult, and Ava can see that this is definitely why he's been called here. He needs to help out his cousin. Now, I'm fine with this, and I really like these sentimental little tender moments. I think this is what gives this Assassin's Creed installment, this Valhalla, the Viking experience, it gives it its heart, is that you really understand why you're doing the things you're doing, instead of just going off and killing someone or breaking some people out of this place or setting fire to this place or assassinating this person. You really understand the emotional argument for or against doing certain things, and I like that. It's very clear that these two cousins are very close, and Ava even talks about a time when his parents were killed, and of course he got his famous bite on his neck from a wolf, and he nearly died, and it was Barid's family who took him in, and without them he almost certainly would have perished. And for that reason he feels like he owes his cousin a blood debt. And now we get to the crux of the emotional argument here, why Ava feels like he needed to come to Ireland and help his cousin out. And as they're talking, you can see there's something watching them in the bushes. Now this is the sinister, spooky, supernatural stuff I want to see. So what is going on there? What is that in the bushes? Even Ava notices and asks his friend about it, his cousin. And actually Barid stands up and his hand goes to his sword. He can see there's something there, but he doesn't quite put it into words, and actually distracts Ava and says, let's just go back to the castle. And at this point you should be escorting Barid back, and of course a neighbouring king, King Thorstein, has sent some of his guards to try and assassinate King Barid. And this is the kind of stuff that he's got to deal with. Just walking around outside the safety of his castle, he finds himself being attacked, and again Ava can see that his cousin seriously is in need of some help here. So he needs to get to the root of this. What is going on, and why does his cousin seem to be being besieged on all sides by different enemies? And what is that in the bushes? That beast-like white golden eyes sort of flickering, is that an animal watching? Is that a sinister growl I heard, or is it someone dressed up with some kind of adornment, headdress or something like that? I'm not sure. Is this something definitely going to be something to do with the druids? But let's see. And then of course, once you've taken out the attackers, get back to the castle and interact with Azar, and he will explain that there's a lot of this stuff going on. And Ava asks some direct questions, tell me what's happening, and his cousin explains that King Thorstein is just trying to take his seat of power away from him, and he needs desperately to get influence with the High King Flan. And Ava agrees to help him with all of this, and he agrees to meet Siegfried in the marketplace tomorrow. So let's see how we get on with that. Thanks for watching.